podcast focused on trends shaping the future of manufacturing. I'm Alexandria Burek, your host, here with A.W. Schultz, two thought leaders with a passion for people and manufacturing. Today and every episode, we are diving deep into the advancements, sustainable practices, and dynamic changes transforming how we produce everything.
And now welcome Alexandria Burek and A.W. Schultz.
Well, hello, Alexandria. How are you today?
Hey, AW, happy to be ready to do a whole new episode. Let's rock.
So, in a previous episode, we were talking about working with difficult people.
Yes.
And off there, you started sharing some stories about a new CMMS system that's going on and some of the struggles or you're seeing about that. And I really just kind of wanted to deep dive into it because that's something that's passionate for me, because when you start looking at motivation and change, going to a new CMMS system is a lot of that. And I'd be curious to see how your journey is going.
Yeah, so it's been wild and fun and a lot all at once. It's kind of opened my eyes up to a whole new world that exists. So maintenance management software is not necessarily new to me, but it is in terms of rolling it out across our organization with the focus on maintaining our semi-trailers, which we have 6,500 of them, give or take. And there's a lot of like sub assets and integrations that we're doing with that to maintain every component of the vehicle. And worth noting, I think it's awesome that that's essentially how you and I met. If it weren't for kind of me bringing that to the organization I work with, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet you and now do this podcast. So, firstly, that's super cool. Secondly, I was really impressed and surprised by kind of the wide kind of group of businesses or wide application that a CMMS could be applied to. When we were at the conference together, I was really impressed and surprised by this idea of all these medical and hospital type companies that are using it, because from a manufacturing and an industrial and transportation background, that really didn't even register as a potential. And then as we were talking about this, you mentioned hotels and I thought of restaurants, and I was like, oh my God, this could be applied to really any and every industry that uses anything that needs maintaining. I mean, theoretically, everyone's house has preventative maintenance that should be done on a routine basis, changing your furnace filters and doing all those different things. So I think that this applies to pretty much everybody and anybody who interacts with anything that could possibly be maintained. Personally, what we've been working on is moving from a reactive to a preventative maintenance strategy. And we've been able to use our CMMS, which for those who don't know, stands for Computerized Maintenance Management Software, to drive behavior from a very reactionary standpoint to a proactive and preventative maintenance behavior. That's your forte and your specialty. So I'd love for you to share kind of your experience in transitioning from this like reactionary, the house is on fire, the equipment is down, taking a factory or a piece of machinery from that state to, hey, we know we have planned maintenance, we're going to down the equipment, we're going to do all these things, so that way we don't have these reactionary house on fire moments.
Yeah. Before I get into that, I'm going to share with you how I do CMMS at home.
Yeah.
And I use a software called Amazon.com. And I've elected my house is either a run to failure or it's time-based PM. So I just go into Amazon and I just, like you said, filters, they come every 3 to 6 months. And when they come, that means I got to change them out. So the same with like fertilizing the lawn. I utilize that case. And of course, light bulbs are typically I run to failure, but I just wanted to share that out. It's like there are simple ways you can have your own at home down and dirty CMMS system.
Yeah.
But To your question is, yeah, I've either you can say I've had the unfortunate or fortunate experience of rolling out CMMS systems. And I always tell this joke because it's always easy because they think I'm telling the future. I'll come in, and I always go, I hear your CMMS system's really bad. I hear it's horrible. And the maintenance guys go, yeah, it's the worst I've ever had. I've never met them. I shouldn't say that. I have now met a couple of mechanics who thrive and say their CMMS system's good. But it's like anything out. It's garbage in, garbage out. It's what you put into it.
Yeah.
And I I've had the pleasure of working in some of the oil and gas industry, and they don't joke around with this stuff because if it's not being done correctly, one, it's regulatory, and two, the stuff can blow up.
Yeah.
So yeah, those PMs, those predictive maintenance systems are pretty well. They're always improving on. But you go to different industries, like in the foods. I was working at one in where was I at? I think I was in Delaware. I don't know, it was really close to, I think it was Delaware, yeah. And this was a fish processing plant. And they had a CMS I had never heard of. And I remember coming in, and the manager or the engineers, they had elected to go to a new CMS system. The planner really didn't know why. I think it might have been cost savings, but they did a big massive data dump into
Yeah.
their new system, and it messed everything up. And that planner, he's been trying to just fix it. They only have one planner, just fix it day in, day out, and just still try to get some work out to the craftsmen or the maintenance staff. And he
And
was frustrated.
understand what even needs to be done at this point
Yeah,
because it sounds
they don't
like,
know. It was just really bad shape.
yeah.
Um, and but the one thing is we couldn't blame the managers on it. So it
No,
was
no. And
they just
I think talking about that point that you brought up of if you're going to do the investment effort, time and energy in changing CMMS, I think the biggest learning experience I've had in my time is being really thoughtful about the end vision and working back. And I think that also comes with the group that you partner with. Like I think that there's the CMMS like the provider needs to guide you through that thought process working back to get all the right inputs in so that way when you go live you're achieving your outcome. And we, like in my experience, we had a really weird kind of planning or implementation pre-go live period. We put a bunch of stuff in there, which was fine, and everything sort of worked. But then when we were ready to do our integration with the GPS tracking software, so we could start giving proactive alerts when trailer maintenance was due and it was at a location that it could be done at, we had to go and do a bunch of rework. And that was a big point of frustration for me. So I did share with the provider, I said, hey, you've got great solution and great software, but I think you guys are doing implementation wrong. You're having people give you information. You're not explaining what the information is used and what the actual end result. You're not helping your clients decide on the end result. You're just taking information, pumping it in, and then you're modifying as time goes on, which could have all been done upstream to have a much better use of the system start to finish. So I think if anybody out there is listening and thinking about implementing or changing CMMS, I think the best bit of advice I could give is thinking about end state or preferred state and work back from that when you're putting this stuff out there and asking the right questions to the provider, because each customer of theirs has a completely different vision and use of the CMMS, which dictates how you want to set things up from the beginning.
No, I agree. When I've seen it done right, it's treated as a legitimate project, and you
Yeah.
have a project manager.
Yeah.
And I was part of an implementation of 55 facilities, and we had it. The company had sold itself off to another larger company at the time, but we had it specially designed for us. And what was nice is that we started asking the questions to the facilities, like, what are some of the things you need? And unfortunately, they didn't know what they needed.
Yeah.
I didn't even know this existed. They were getting PMs in the mail that this organization they had, they would get a stack of paper once a month with all the PMs that they needed to do. So it wasn't even on computers. So when we were doing it, we started off, having, so the maintenance would have like a toolbox meeting, which is the start of the shift. So we take a little bit of time in that and explain what's coming down the road in the future. And they're open to that. It's like, yeah, stuff's not getting fixed because, people aren't recognizing things are broken, and they certainly can agree to that. But where they became intimidated is the technology that they were going to have to use. They were going to have to use a new software, computer, and this is right at the verge of smartphones. So it wasn't that. I mean, I don't put up with excuses that, the guy doesn't know how to use the software and he's on Facebook on his phone. Because you can do that. I think you can figure out the software because they do. Some companies do a very good job making it intuitive, but others, it can be learned. It can be learned.
Yeah.
And but the point was, I guess it was in this particular case, we were communicating, train, communicate, and it was successful. It was, I mean, we measured success based on deployments, and we met the deployments. So the senior leaders saw that this was deployed. We were getting metrics. We were getting work that was getting done, and I was pretty proud of that. I thought that was a success. Well, it was my first experience with it, and it was a success story. So I thought every other time would be fine. And coming down, and there's like I've had many experiences where it didn't roll out fine, and there wasn't even a manager on it. Someone just turned the key on it.
Yeah, and I think that's, if I was to give the don'ts, it's don't rush, engage the end users like you just said, and don't just put information in without having a goal of how that's going to be used. For us, it's been transformative. What I find to be the most exciting and the most, I would say, advanced part of our software and the use is the integration of other technologies that our business already uses. So by taking existing siloed technologies and blending them together and integrating them, we are exponentially leveling up our maintenance program. We're taking GPS software and location data on our trailers, which are fluid and moving across the country. We're marrying that with the maintenance schedule that we've prescribed. And then we're notifying proactively via email and via the software that trailer needs this maintenance at this time. And we look forward to extending that out in multiple different ways and kind of meeting some DOT requirements. We are looking to use that to manage, like, we have technically about 50,000 trailer tires that we're expected to maintain, which are all require their own individual maintenance stuff. We've got Goodyear tracking all that over here, but we don't have a way of actively using all the data that Goodyear is capturing. And I think that's a lot of what Industry 5.0 is. Now we've got an overload of data, but we don't have any way of using it, right? Like that's a lot of what you deal with, and you're helping your clients to solve that problem, is taking this excessive amounts of data and turning it into actionable preventative maintenance programs, right?
Yeah. So you kind of touched on it. Certainly, when you start talking about companies that have a lot of assets, CMMS it's not asking if they have a system. It's asking, what is their system?
Yeah.
And I do training on planning and scheduling, which you can't do it without a CMMS system. And I've done it I talked about the fish company. I've done it in food and beverage. I've done it in oil and gas, petro. Last month, I was in Africa at a power company, and another company at a shipyard and logistics transportation. My presentations are all the same.
Yeah.
Because the practices are all the same.
Yeah.
And it's about having a process and system that individuals buy into and they can agree on. And it's got to be simple. It's got to be simple.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of these CMMSs, especially if you got a mess in there, and by the way, don't do this because this has happened to me, where one maintenance manager decided one way to clean up all these repetitive requests is you're just going to delete them all.
Oh, well,
And
that's
that's one
a good
way.
way. That's a good way.
Well, he didn't realize that you are jeopardizing your credibility when you do that.
Yeah.
And they talked about it for years that, I put this PM in there, nobody does anything. They just throw it away. And it's like, well, the same
You
PM
need
was
to
in there
change
three
the
times.
behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's that stories too.
Yeah. How do you handle your preventative maintenance? I delete the work orders.
Yeah. And
Um,
my numbers look great.
yeah, and I'm crushing it over here. The machinery is always down, but my numbers are incredible.
Yeah.
Um,
So it must be
yeah,
you.
yeah, clearly. So can I ask you a question then? Maybe before we close out here, leave the audience with maybe 3 to 5 of your best practices when it comes to preventive maintenance and CMMS solutions.
I so the best practices, and I told you I was in Africa, and I drilled this home, and I did it on PowerPoints, I did it on games we played, and
Yeah.
also just reiterated it. The first thing starts with having what I call a gatekeeping meeting,
Yep.
and the gatekeeping meeting is a collaboration between operations and maintenance and the planner, and you do this every day.
Oh, wow.
And this now that we're talking companies that have high assets and they have a dedicated planner. But the point is that this forces the operational side to talk with the maintenance side to give directions to the planning side on what notifications came in from him or her side. And it really clears up the water a little bit because, excuse me, too often a lot of these companies will do is that they'll start creating this backlog of unplanned work. And if the planners and maintenance don't know what's important, they're going to pick what they want.
Yeah.
But if you include the operation side in it early on a daily basis, this meeting doesn't need to be longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That can have a beneficial area of keeping track of what is in your backlog and make sure you've got a health into it.
Yeah.
The other takeaway is having a weekly meeting on the planning and scheduling. So, some facilities have a planner scheduler in the same role, but often they struggle to get the attention of operations, and having that. So there's time we have to shut the equipment down to work on it, right?
Yeah.
And having that collaboration.
I
And the
love
other
this.
things,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think what you're saying is very obvious, but also often overlooked and not implemented. Bringing the various groups of the process together to have just that, like you said, meaningful and impactful 5-minute conversation to clear the air and say, hey, this is what we've got. This is what needs to be prioritized. And on the flip side of that, offering a notice to the operations team of, hey, we have planned maintenance, planned downtime that you are needing to account for. That just smooths things out so much. So great recommendations to the audience. Obvious, but yet probably not happening in most cases. Thanks.
yeah. Well, a lot of times what will happen is that, especially if an operations runs 24/7, they'll have maintenance. If they're smart, they have maintenance during the daytime because that's when the stores are open. That's usually when your most experienced maintenance are there. That's
Yeah.
when engineering's there.
Yeah.
But sometimes the third shifts, they think that they're doing the right thing by trying to get more production off and more than normal. They might make a big batch of something and then they're stuck running because they got to run it out, or equipment's got to cool down and like they're standing around for hours. So making
Yeah.
sure that the third or the off shifts are in alignment and understand how important it is to be down.
Yeah.
The other thing, I got lots of these.
Yeah.
I'll just say there's just when I talk about planning, I talk about a 4-stage process. The first is the initiation of it. The second is the execution of it. Um, the third is just validating the work got done. But the
Yeah.
fourth thing, and this is the hardest one, is for the planners to ask for feedback or to get feedback on
Okay.
the work that they planned out.
Okay.
Because if they don't, they're not improving it.
Okay.
And it's too often we talked about other episodes about egos, about asking yourself, what could we do to improve it?
Yeah.
And that's the simplest way of how you start to improve your CMMS and your work management system.
Yes. Yes, I agree. And maybe something that if a planner is listening to this episode and is thinking, well, what could I ask and what feedback should I expect? I also in my head was kind of guessing that you were going to say testing. So I feel like I was kind of close on that for the fourth step. But like I would say is if I were the planner, I would ask the people who are affected by my job, aka the mechanics and the operators, how can I make your job faster, better, easier? Right? Because that's probably what the planner is really trying to do. How can I make this maintenance activity faster, better, easier for you? Or on the opposite of that, less disruptive to your day to day, or, something to that tune. Is that what you were getting at by asking for feedback? And those might help guide somebody to ask that question?
No, that's exactly why, because I go into a lot of these facilities, and often the leadership, they think that just all my mechanics are lazy. And that's
Oh,
not true.
yeah, we
It's not
talked
true.
about that because that was also like one of the things you said with the downtime of a mechanics, like the kit packaging and all that other stuff that we were talking about that
Yeah,
one time.
yeah, that needs to be done for them.
Yeah.
But truth be told, it's usually the planning and scheduling that causes a lot of these delays.
Um,
I like using the example of, you're driving by the construction workers on the side of the road working on the streets, and you see one guy working and 8 guys standing around. Um, that job wasn't well planned.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
And
now
there
we know
might be
now we
reasons,
know
but
who to question on that. Now we know who to
it's the
question. Thank
planners. Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we have so far gatekeeping meetings to improve communication across the board. We have creating a feedback loop for the planner operations and the maintenance techs who are carrying out these tasks. Do you have any other key takeaways? Maybe one more before we clock out?
Yeah, it's the other thing is, surprisingly, and you won't see this if you do any kind of Google searches out there, but in reality, between best practices on getting mechanics on their, so wrench time is, time on tool, and um, especially heavy asset companies, heavy companies that have, a lot of mechanics, that's an important metric to them. But in a lot of cases, from best in class to what is normal, and if you don't measure it, you're probably in the 20 to 35% efficient for a mechanic. Best in class is around 59 to 60%. And we can go into reasons later on, but one of the takeaways is that 23% of mechanics time is often due to scheduling problems, whether it's they're delayed on getting permits, parts aren't available, or waiting on other resources, or
Yeah.
waiting on the equipment to become available.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that goes. It's not often not a metric that gets discussed, but it's one that has a lot of impact on it. And when I was with my clients in Africa or in Ghana, that was one of the things I asked them, was like, do you know your wrench time? And they go, no, we don't. Well, it's probably around this. And I found out they do have a really good, healthy CMMS system, and they have
Yeah.
planner schedulers in place, and they're doing a lot of great stuff. But it's like thing, if you don't know how good you are unless you start to measure it. You can't fix what you don't measure.
How do you measure wrench time?
That is a
Or is
ask
that the
Robert.
next episode?
Yeah, that's lots of stories about. You
Okay.
follow the guy around and you write down what he's doing all day, or the guy or the girl.
Okay. Okay. So that could be a way. Cause like I'm just thinking in my head, we are in our organization just now taking over a whole internal maintenance department. This we brought on in last year. We're just building out KPIs. Like literally, these mechanics just came on board under our department in the last year. These mechanics just started using from paper work orders to CMMS time tracking and behavior type stuff in the last 6 months. So we're very early in infant stages of this development. And I'm thinking, okay, how do we track wrench time? Because the manager has a great set of processes in place for his guys to record their time.
Yeah.
So now I think my job would be then taking those different time tables that they have and transferring that to calculating out wrench time. So thank you for helping me solve a work problem.
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah, a manager may just ask them to write down what they're doing all day.
Yeah, I'm actually doing
Not that accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, doing this wrench time is not that accurate at all. That's why you have to take a lot of samples so you can actually see if there's trends in it.
Yeah, interesting. But I mean, even so, just knowing that 30% of the time is the average, and so that means a mechanic, when they're working, 70% of the time they're not actually cranking a wrench. They're not
Well,
actually.
you can't, because remember, they got to take breaks. They got to use the restroom. They
have to think about how to solve the problem, find the parts. Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Is there anything else that you haven't shared about CMMS or preventative maintenance that you want to leave the audience with before we clock out?
Well, I say this stuff, but I did write a book on it.
That's cool. That's cool.
And yeah, I share a lot of best practices in there.
Cool.
So there's lots of more topics we can go into on it. And maybe we do at some later point, but I think this is a good breaking point. And I think it's a topic that's close to me, and it sounds like it's pretty close to you now.
Yeah, same. Hey, where can people find your book if they wanted to read kind of the in-depth, very deep dive? Can you please share that with the audience now? Yeah. And then show notes we'll include that.
I sell it on Amazon. So if you just do a search for A.W. Schultz on Amazon, it'll pop up.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we'll have to link that in the show notes as well. We'll put all of your books. Do you have like an Amazon storefront where if somebody wanted to buy your whole collection, they could?
Yes. Yep.
Cool. We'll put that in the show notes. And I guess with that, we're clocking out.
We're clocking out for today. All right.
Okay.
This is Factory of the Future, and we are out of here like finished goods. Stay tuned for our next episode of Factory of the Future, where we're exploring groundbreaking techniques and behaviors that are reshaping industrial landscapes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review and help others discover the cutting-edge insights transforming manufacturing as we know it.